Hi, this is Veruschka Normandeau. I'm a healing arts coach and a human being and a super freak on the big island of Hawaii. And today I'm going to have an interesting guest to me that's going to be a little bit out of the ordinary, maybe. So my guest today is Timothy Kester Hart, and he is residing in Iceland. And so practically we are on opposite ends of this globe, and we get to connect about, I don't know, I'm going to have to ask you in a moment, 2 years ago or so, I was contacted on Facebook by this person I didn't have any mutual friends with. And I clicked on his profile and I saw these beautiful landscape images of Iceland, of lava, of volcano, water, nature, a naked butt in nature. And I'm like, who is this guy? What does he, what does he want? I'm not online dating or anything. And then I think I found a message a little while later, and this thing, I always never know how to describe it, human design. Human design is this thing that I'm going to have you talk about, that I've been following, have learned a lot about myself from, and I'm trying to use some of the strategy in my life around it. So Tim let me know that he had located me because I was the most similar to his design. And so since we've gotten to know each other, I've found out, not only do we both live on a volcanic island, we live by hot springs, we love water, we have a lot of things, very quirky things in common. I love monolithic domes and dome houses, and I was in building and renovation forever. And turns out he built monolithic domes. We frequent hot springs. He's into aerial yoga. We danced professionally for probably the same amount of time, and theater and improv, like a lot of similar interests. And even though we don't connect that regularly, the times we do, he has been the best therapist for me. I mean, it's like having a true doppelganger. It's like, what would it be like to find myself as a male living on the other side of the world? What are we doing? What are we feeling? What are we thinking? And it's pretty novel. I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Double Life of Veronique, or what's another movie I thought of recently? Just like encountering someone who is the same but not the same, and it's just been a tremendous blessing gift to me. So we decided just to have a chat and see what happens with our chat, and hoping that us connecting, others may benefit from some of our conversation and our authenticity and our connection. And possibly you're going to learn a great deal and maybe be inspired by human design, which I think is just something, if you're even remotely interested in astrology or just self-growth and personal development, you might be interested in checking out. It has been a huge aha in my life. So without further ado, Timothy, he is a water specialist, no less. Welcome. Would you like to share with me what you call yourself and what you identify with, and what kind of labels or titles you take with you throughout your life?
Thank you. Well, thank you for a lovely introduction. Yeah, titles and things. I've been called many things in many different circumstances, but I've certainly have a very wild and varied experience. But a constant theme has been on energy and in sort of natural natural, sustainable development in natural things. Yeah, certainly sort of cleaning and environmental aspects, you know, so, yeah, just to sort of, to tidy up where you started in regards to how I contacted you. I've done numerous different medical mind, body, spirit qualifications over the years. And I just finished some EFT study work, and I was doing some investigating online, and I came across your website, and there was just something about the picture of you that resonated in me. A bit like when you sort of, I don't know if ever you've been shopping and you've suddenly seen the most perfect shoes ever, or a pair of shoes from your dreams, and you see them and it's like life freezes and you sort of just like really remember that moment. Well, that was sort of similar to what it was like when I saw you. And I then read on your profile on your website at the time and everything, and sort of contacted you, because it was also, I think, around that time that I had been aware of your profile somewhere in human design. I'm not sure quite exactly that was, but I know that I contacted you from having read your website with the EFT and the work that you do. So just to tidy that bit up. But yeah, it's, I don't know, I have had a very fortuitous life. I've always remained or claimed that I've had a very fortuitous life. I just sort of, yeah, I'm a freak like you. And
would you like to elaborate on what the freak is and what some of our commonalities in our design is, to just educate the public?
Yeah, well, basically, we're now talking about human design, and human design basically shows you your star stamp or your tattoo. Purely and simply, we get used to barcodes and all our food products wherever we buy. You can't buy an item without having a barcode on it. Well, basically, your human design chart is very much like your barcode of the time and the place when you were born. And this actually, like a tattoo or a star stamp, it imprints into your DNA. And it has a dualistic aspect in the fact of everything in life is a duality, night, day, hot, cold, etc., etc. And human design explains and shows the mechanics of how we have our consciousness and our subconsciousness. Our consciousness, as in our personality, the idea of who we think we are, the 16 hours a day where we're actually awake and listening to that internal voice or having conversations with ourselves. And then you've got the subconscious, of which we're not aware of, which is the body, which controls and runs everything and works 24/7. So within the actual system, there is approximately around 64,000 types of basic designs that you can get. And in our case, we are extremely similar because we only have one singular channel defined, of which is known as the 2343 Genius to Freak channel. And it is also unconscious. So we are completely open in the rest of our definition. We just have this singular channel of structuring, which is unconscious. And profiles, I believe you're a 1-3 and I'm a 1-4. So we both have that investigative aspect to us as well. Yeah, so that's the chances of, I don't know, there's probably, I don't know what the probability is, but it's quite remarkable that we should connect like we connect very much, as we sort of say, we're like a brother or sister sort of thing from a different mother, you know, but going back to when I first sort of noticed you or became sort of aware of you, it's very interesting that, you know, to know of that resonance of our similarity, you know, so it's, yeah. Anything that I've missed out on, or did that answer your question okay?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, I did forget to mention the part that we both are extremely investigative and passionate about the healing arts and healing with children and aromatherapy, you know, essential oils. I mean, that we are into, you know, the subtleties of consciousness and transformation and the investigation of our potential. And what draws me to you is that you're pretty merciless about it, and I feel that I am too, in the ways of just really wanting to know the truth of things. And I feel like that's why I trust you. And you remind me of who I am, like what my mechanics are, and in such a short time, just hearing your voice, like boom, whatever was going on, it's like it shifted, like boom, like smoke was cleared, and I have like an instant tune-up. So what can you share with me and us about the Freak to Genius channel, like what comes through, and explain that a little bit, and how much of the population would be our brother and sister?
Well, okay, well, a couple of things there. Our definition creates us to be what's known as a mental projector, which is a little bit of a tricky ride for us because we don't have any inner authority. The whole premise and basis really of human design is that it enables people to understand how to make a decision correct for themselves. That's the biggest thing, you know, because we make decisions throughout the course of the day, some minor, some major, you know, just simply trying, following this pattern related to your specific design in how you should make a decision. Within a week, you can see the benefits, you can see the reaction, you can see that there is flow here, there is harmony here, there's no dissonance or resistance, you know. So that's one thing to take on board with how tricky a ride it is for us being mental projectors. There's many different types of projectors, and there's 4 basic types overall within human design, projectors being one of them. It's only around 1% of the population of the planet are a mental projector. So the information it has been supplied says, so from that angle, that's quite small. If you looked at the connotations of how many ways of which you could create a mental projector, from the top of my head, there's probably about sort of 200 or so. So potentially we could take that 1% and divide it by 200 to then get down even further. So there's obviously a few 100,000 of us that probably have the exact definition that we have, but it is obviously a 0.00% of the planet, shall we say. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's what I find so interesting is how the fact of that we met sort of when we're in our mid-30s, and we hadn't had any communication before we met. And yet, as you were saying earlier, Veruschka, that we've had so many similar sort of paths, so many similar experiences, so many similar journeys in a way of which we had no connection to one another, we had no knowing of each other, and yet from this very, very similar definition, we've had very, very similar experiences. To me, this sort of concretizes the quality of this information data that is human design, which has only been around since 1987. You know, the big aspect that I think people don't really understand yet, I think hasn't really got into the full consciousness of the New Age, as much as I don't like the term New Age and all that jazz, but everybody's working on the old 7-centered premise rather than the 9-centered premise. And this is where human design really does sort of, cut the sheaf from the wheat, or whatever as the saying says. So, but anyway, I'm starting to blurt again, which is actually a part of our channel. It's the channel of blurt, as some people say, because it's unconscious. We don't necessarily know what we're going to say. We actually have to listen to what we say to when we're speaking to someone who we trust, to actually get part of our own authority, because we don't have any of our own inner authority. So it's a very acoustic channel. We can also at times be very deaf to other people. There's many aspects in human design. Human design is very, very simple in any way you look at it, but there are multifaceted layers. So you understand one bit, but then you've got to take on board another piece and another piece and another piece. But yeah, so we can easily just rant. And sometimes if we do this when we're invited, we can be perceived as the genius. And when we're not invited, because invitations are an aspect of projectors, we can come off as the freak. When we're not invited, we can just blurt it out and we're freakish. On top of that, our channel is part of what's known as circuitry and the individual circuitry. And again, any gate or channel activation within the individual circuitry is freakish.
So in other words, I'm kind of part of your evidence in your inquiry into human design. I'm more proof for you, right? So how have you benefited in meeting me, A? And B, how has human design changed your life?
Human design has changed my life dramatically. If any, maybe we should sort of show our charts at some stage in this presentation, but there's an awful lot of openness with us. We have 7 centers open, and this is where we get conditioned. The benefit that human design has given me in my life is that where I've for many years had an issue with a certain aspect that, people always treat me this way, or why is it I can never be like this without anyone really listening to me, or etc. Human design puts all of those aspects completely into the trash can, because it explains why you do what you do and why you don't do what you don't do. And the mind is not your best friend. Your mind is my friend and my mind is your friend, but our own minds are not our friends, if that made sense.
Yeah.
And it is the mind where most people listen to, which has corrupted them, has made them upset, angry, indifferent, living a false life, because everybody listens to this voice rather than listening to the body. People just don't respect the fact that the body doesn't clock out 8 hours every day. We go to sleep each night, like clocking out from work. We just go off and then we come back in the morning, we clock in, and we have the audacity to think that this is still the one that's in charge. Well, hang on, who was being in control of everything? Who was making sure that everything was still working whilst I was asleep? We're number 2. We're not the boss, But in regards to how you have benefited my life, I think we don't need to go into some of the personal communications that we've had over the years, where having someone who actually really can resonate truly, can really understand, as well as being there to listen, listening is another great subject of mine, with the great work of Julian Treasure. I recommend everybody sort of research more on him and his work with listening, actually properly listening. And you who always listen to me properly, as I try to do the same with you. The thing is, everybody is walking a very tightrope in life. we can fall this way and that way. It's a difficult thing to try and keep in balance. Even with human design information, it is still tricky. But boy, human design really is that stick that you hold on to keep, help you with your balance. Without human design, you're walking that tightrope with no assistance, and knowing what that you have someone there who you can speak to, who can understand you, who can resonate with you, as well as bringing new aspects and experiences to be of benefit for my learning and my experience. So I thank you for that.
So tell us about how you found human design and how it impacted you at the moment that you read about your design or your profile.
Okay, I was just completing my medicine qualifications.
And what year was that?
This was in January 2010. It came up towards the end of the course because I've done numerous different works, as I mentioned, in regards to the body and understanding the body. It came up in one of the last lectures that it can be very, very beneficial to actually have someone's human design chart and understand a little bit about human design to actually see where their motivations are, where's different aspects of how they consistently work energetically or not. This picked my, something in this just like my ears picked up, and I was quite insistent on finding more details from my great teacher, Richard Fluke, and got some details, and I actually found out that there was actually someone in Iceland who could give me a reading. And I booked a reading, had the reading, and at the time, it didn't really change much for me. But
it wasn't a big aha moment or any
no,
kind of, like you didn't make any decisions about your lifestyle or
no, well it was
after? Oh, I'll let you finish.
Sorry, yeah, it's like I had the reading, enjoyed it, got an audio, which is normally the case when you get a reading, and I played it a few times, and there was a lot of things that resonated, but there was still this chart that looked incredibly complicated, and didn't really understand it. Wanted to know more, but it, just my life was very busy then with the contract I was doing then, in charge of making pharmaceutical drugs for a company. I was in a relationship of which I started to get this feeling in my chest, of which just kept on nagging and nagging and nagging away at me. And more than anything, this actually resulted in me actually leaving the relationship, which was one of the hardest things I did because I was in love with my girlfriend. And there was just this internal thing sort of saying, you're not leaving your life, you're not leaving your life, you're just sort of going through the motions and sort of being what they want you to be. And it was literally 18 months to the day from when I had the reading that I actually left her house. And soon after that, I started being in my own environment, which is a very important thing for us. I started studying and being a 1-4 mental projector, study. And, I've done lectures in different countries around the world now, and helped numerous people through Skype. And yeah, it certainly changed my view of the world. I'm certainly not the person that I was. I did encounter a burnout around a year after leaving my girlfriend, which again is sort of a typical experience of a 1-4. But it enabled me to study and to be alone. And as much as it was probably two of the hardest years of my life with my burnout, now it's looking back, it's probably the best thing that's ever happened to me, to actually be allowed that opportunity to really go slightly mad with yourself, and come out of it teaching yourself more about yourself by yourself. It's a priceless thing to when you really start to get that self-reflected consciousness when you meet other people, and to actually truly watch your life and what happens.
Do you have a community in Iceland of people who are interested or follow human design?
No.
But you had your reading from someone there.
Yes. Una Inga Jensen. We don't interact as much as I would maybe like, but I have a very, from before I got into human design, I had a huge social network. Was always sort of doing things, very active, and lots of things occurring. Now with human design, I have literally 4 or 5 close friends here in Iceland, and they are people of which I have spoken to them with their designs. I, have helped them, and it's very interesting how they comment that they talk deep with me, or they talk such personally to me more than they do their wife or their partner, and it's a very interesting thing when you have a very few quality friends compared to a vast majority of acquaintances. It is a life-altering experience with human design, but it is what it claims. It is an experience. You have to try it for yourself. There is no religion. There is no hooby jooby deeby dooby boo 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 talk. It is just mechanics, and it is your life. You've already experienced your life. You start reading the material. You've already got your life to look back on and check upon that. And I think this is part of what made me just want to read more. The more I read, the more I wanted to read more, because it was just consistently 80-90% of the time extremely accurate, but it's the mechanics of the Maya.
So what can you enlighten everyone what the roles kind of in general is of a mental projector in the community, in the population?
The role of the mental projector. Well,
maybe you can highlight our strengths and weaknesses.
Well, there's more weaknesses than strengths, I would say. The first thing that I think, to be accurate, you have to preface that with is the conditioning, because you and I are living, and those also who are into human design around the world, we may be operating correct, or we are walking that tightrope with this assistance, with a greater understanding of allowing the body to do what it is here to do. And we follow what's known as our strategy and authority. And this is where what I mentioned earlier, everybody has a specific strategy and authority based upon themselves. It's how they can make a decision correct for themselves. Now, as much as people in the human design community are being more correct than the average person, they're surrounded by a community and the tribe that are working incorrect. So when you mention, what can a mental projector do that's good? Well, a mental projector can only really sort of do so much depending upon its environment, where the audience, where its network is. Now, where a mental projector can be good in, let's say, a human design community, is that mental projectors have what's known as more of a aspect of outer authority within them. Anybody who follows their design can have outer authority when they're operating correctly, but mental projectors have a greater degree of outer authority. We are best positioned where we sort of have like a group of people nearby. Say you've got a group of people sitting around a campfire, or the mental projector would be good just to sit on the edge, a little bit away from them, to still be able to observe everything that's going on, and then to be here when we're invited to share. Because you know, there's one of the four types is a manifester. This should initiate. Then you have the generator, which is the worker, and then you have the reflector, which is very few, and they just sort of reflect everything and give back this sort of feedback in a way. But they're lunar. They're not sun. That's the big thing which most people forget about reflectors, is that they're completely different to us. But anyway, from having you know, the sun's influence with projectors, manifestors, and generators, the projector needs to be invited. And as much as there's many different types of projectors, the mental projector is best to keep its aura very clean, because we're very, very open. And then we need to be invited to aid and assist the group or the situation. But generally, being in sort of isolation, or at least keeping ourselves and our aura very clean for the vast majority of the time, is important. As much as it's good that we have interaction with other people, it's very good for us to remain in our own aura for the vast majority. Negative aspect, again, it really comes into the fact that we don't have our inner authority. We need someone to speak to in who we trust to soundboard. There's also equally an aspect of regards to the environment. Mental projectors can actually get an awful lot of information just from the room of which we're in, the location of which we're in. We can get a lot of information from this. You know, I understand that there's a story of a highly experienced mental projector who could go into a room and stick out their tongue like a snake does, and could literally taste and sense the environment. This is something that is quite interesting. You know, that there's sort of potentials with what you can do with this information if you're into your own experience. See, I'm blurting again.
I think I didn't hear you. I didn't really hear you highlight what our role is in a positive way.
Well, the role in the positive way is that we have this outer authority. So generally speaking, projectors are the guide. The manifestor initiates, the generator works, the projector is a guide. Now, mental projectors can actually guide projectors. You know, it's trying to word it. It's
Can you give us an example of what it would mean to guide, like a practical situation, maybe in a work environment or in a community environment? What would be their highest exalted position that they are benefiting?
Well, okay. The one thing just to sort of say is that there is no elitist sort of aspect in any one design or another. It is a science of differentiation. It is not that this is good, this is bad. It's just different. You know, everybody is all like a snowflake. We are all unique. And this is what I think is part of the beauty of really human design, is that it just shows us who we actually are, not who we're conditioned to be like from the media or our parents or our boss or, you know, the school teacher. you know, we are actually shown and demonstrated what are our characteristics and what ones we have missing. And we've had our life to actually compare this, and you can see this quite quickly for yourself. You know, you only go into this experiment if you actually want to learn more about yourself. And the best person to teach you is yourself, because we all have a way of which we look. One aspect of human design is variable, which shows 16 different ways of which basically our brains are wired to look and perceive and to see things. And you can have any one type of variable. You know, so you really need to see your own chart from your own eyes, because you're the only person who's really going to be able to grasp that essence. You know, it is like everybody's like a chili. We've got all, you know, we've got the meat, we've got the peppers, we've got the onions, we've got the sauce, but, you know, we've got different spices. You know, yeah, we're all a chili, but we've all got a different flavor. And the gates, the variables, the profiles, these can all help to sort of show and demonstrate, because it is a very visual system in education. You know, it works in many, many countries around the world because it's a visual system. So you can have people who can look at a chart on the wall, not being able to speak the same language, but they can look at this chart and they can understand this person very well. So it's really understanding that you yourself are the only person who can really grasp you. Now, a mental projector potentially could demonstrate, could guide to any newbie to this information, certainly better than a generator or a manifester potentially, because this is our, you know, it's part of our signature in the fact of, you know, we have the success from actually guiding, or we get the bitterness when we get it wrong. It's not anything about what's better or worse. There is countless possibilities of how one person can benefit another. Typically, generators have the energy, but they don't know where to put that energy. And a projector can sort of say, like, no, don't put it there, put it like this. And then straight away that generator has saved energy, because he's now being guided to do it in a structured manner or an organized manner. And the generator will get more satisfaction from that, which is a generator's theme, not the frustration that they would have done. And the projector will get success from seeing the satisfaction from that generator. And the generator potentially will then come back to the projector, and with their enveloping aura will actually give them the energy that projectors need, because projectors we don't have energy. You know, we're a non-energy type.
And so, I mean, I could ask you many questions from there on, but I want to, human design aside, when you wake up in the morning, what motivates you? What are you motivated by? And maybe human design has confirmed to you like what you're motivated by, but really when you're waking up in the morning, how are you making your choices? Like, what really motivates you as a non-energy type living alone? And also, what fulfills you? Like, what really brings you that satisfaction?
Well, you know, it's when I wake up, because I tend to sleep sort of between 10 to 12 hours a day generally.
Which is a projector thing too, correct? To need solid sleep. Maybe, I mean, not saying 12 hours, but they do need a solid rest, as I understand.
Yeah, well, the thing with sleeping and projectors is that we should lay down horizontally an hour before we want to go to sleep, because 70% of the population have this center called sacral, which defines them to be a generator. And if the actual body or the form of a projector lays down horizontally for an hour, this gives time for that sacral energy to dissipate. So then by the time that hour has come up, then we're actually in a position where we can actually go to sleep, and we have a better quality of sleep. You know, generators, as an example, they're like a Duracell bunny. They're the ones who should carry on doing things until they literally hit that wall and okay, I need to go to bed now. And they just hit the pillow and they just crash out. They're very much like the modern day lithium-ion batteries. They work better if you fully charge and fully discharge. That is how they can get a better night's sleep. You know, I find this information, you know, absolutely priceless to be able to actually give this out to parents. You know, we all know, maybe have experienced ourselves, how that bedtime is always an issue when you're a child or with your children. Understanding simply their basic type and their basic principle of how they should sleep, how they should approach sleep. It can create an awful lot of hassle-free environment in the home, you know, because it's not just the brother that's the issue. You know, the sister gets disrupted because the brother's causing an issue to go to sleep. You know, the parents end up having an argument because, well, you know, it's your turn, I did it last night, you know, and they're talking about the thing that they love most, and the reason why they go out to work hard every day is in order to supply the home and the money and the food for their children. But when it comes to putting them to bed at night, they call them it and thing. You know, I've observed this, and I'm sure many other people have. This for me is really how powerful this human design information is, because it, you know, it gets rid of all the ego. It gets rid of all the bullshit that goes with it. It just shows simple mechanics. You're this. Okay. Right. And you need to do this. Fine. House is peaceful. No problems. Child gets a good night's sleep. You know, you're just literally with a generated child. For anybody who may know, you know, they got their bedtime. Fine. You got the bedtime. You get them clean their teeth, put the gym jams on, put them into their bedroom with a low light. They can play with their toys. They can play. They can read. They can do anything, but they're ready for bed. So when they do actually end up using all their energy, bang, all they've got to do is walk the several feet to fall into bed. Simple as. You know, it's just an example of many where human design can really show so much efficiency and correctness that benefits the whole environment.
So, okay, you still didn't
No, sorry.
Motivates you, and what gives you satisfaction? But I do think that is, I mean, it is priceless. I'm thinking for parents, for parenting, that this would be just revolutionary information. And I don't know, how do you introduce this to parents? How do you refer to human design? How do you explain it in a nutshell?
Being projectors, our choice of weapon, for want of a better word, is questions. You know, we don't have energy. We can't jump up and down and scream and shout and to get attention. Where we're best suited is just to actually observe and give a question. And what I tend to do is, like, I may witness a situation with my friends, you know, and their children in the environment. Well, once I'm alone with either the mother or the father, because again, projectors work much better one-on-one with people. Generators are different, manifestors are different. You know, each type has different ways of which it is best suited for us to operate. And once I have the mother or the father alone, I will try to bring up a question. You know, it's like, hey, you know, I noticed that you did this with Tommy, putting him to bed. You know, do you mind me asking why you did it in that way? You know, and then they may say whatever, and I say, okay, but how are you knowing? How are you basing this upon? Is this from your experience from your parents, or and I just try and talk about the subject without really going anywhere specifically, but just to get them thinking on the subject. It's a very good thing for if a projector can ask a question in a way which puts a seed into their head rather than giving them a question that feeds them the answer. Mm-hmm. It isn't about giving them the answer. That isn't being a good guide. Being a guide is, creating an interesting conversation from the basis of a question that then gives them the idea that they come up with the answer themselves. That's what's being a good guide. Sometimes, the generator is just being stupid and you just have to sort of say, no, it's the other side, idiot, but, that's not always the case. But getting back to motivation, because this is the question that I keep on being distracted from, but I actually have innocence as a motivation. And I get up, I do my usual stretches and routine before I get out of bed. I have sort of like a semi-yoga ballet sort of stretch routine that I do. Clean my teeth, have a pee like most people do when they wake up. And then I walk to the lounge and look out on the ocean and the mountains, see what kind of day it is, put on some coffee. I don't try to think.
So let me interrupt you. You don't currently have any conditioned pressure. Do you feel like that you've been practicing this long enough that you're not experiencing this pressure of like, okay, what do I have to do or get done or shoulds? You feel like you're out of that game a little bit at this point?
Yeah, totally, because part of what human design enables you to have is your own authority. Part of the strategy and authority, you soon start to realize and experience for yourself that you are the only person that is really in control of your life. Well, in a way, your body is in control of your life. Your mind is a distraction and a disruption. Your mind is for other people, but it's very good at measuring and analyzing, and it's something we just have. But when you actually have looked into your own design and you've actually got a general grasp of the system, you actually recognize your own authority. And me being a projector, needing to be invited into things, I just do what I sort of want to do. I'm not in a rush to do anything. If I want to do something and I'm passionate about it, or if I'm creative, then sure, I can get up early and I can go and do something, bing, bang, bong. But generally, I just allow my body to wake up when it wakes up. I'm very fortunate in that I'm in that situation where I can do this. Not everybody can. And I just allow the day to come to me. There is, you have another aspect which is called like the transit weather or the background weather, the neutrinos, of which an awful lot of the human design information actually sort of shows the neutrino influence, which physics is still really catching up upon in their understanding, even though they've had the idea of this concept for about 70, 80 years. It still took them virtually that amount of time to actually prove that they existed. But the neutrino influence is like a consistent changing weather that affects all of our moods. So, I know maybe that like today is a fifth line heretic day. I know that yesterday I went out and I was social because it was a fourth line day. There's different aspects into how you're going to actually be feeling just from the neutrinos. Now, most people will think this is total hooby-gooby, blah, blah, because, it's what the hell are they talking about? But in actual fact, this is part of the mechanics. This is actually, I'm aware that my monopole in my chest. The monopole is a thing that sort of keeps the two crystals together but separated in the illusion of what life is about. And basically the monopole, as I say, it's like on your radio you have a tuning in dial, and there's constant radio waves coming from the sun and other planets, and your monopole sort of tunes you into these. We get affected by this, and this changes our moods, our appetite, all sorts of things. But most people don't understand this. They don't actually listen to their body. They go to the doctor and take some medication, which then confuses the mind even more. Distracting again, sorry, I'm just going off.
No, it's a lot of information, and it's, I don't know, you know, we're going to have to post like a translator page so that people can follow. But if you were to give someone advice to someone that is not going to look up their chart, and what advice would you give them? It sounds like something along the lines of listening to your body. Like, what's the best advice you would give someone who's probably not going to look into it?
I would say just life is entertaining. Enjoy it. You know, if someone's not going to look into it, you know, I don't have anything to gain from anybody listening to me. All we're doing here is we're doing something for each other. We want to do this for ourselves. We're creating a library for us. Maybe in time other people will see this. If someone else gets benefit from that, then good. You know, if they don't, then good. Because again, coming back to our own authority, you know, it is my life. You know, I only really care about myself in a way without being selfish, you know, but I'm honest to myself before anybody else. And, you know, if someone isn't interested in the information, fine, you know, just enjoy yourself. Just enjoy life. It's entertaining. There is no golden promise or pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. It is just entertaining. It's full of duality. Yeah. You know, you're having fun, good, enjoy it. But there's a lot of people who aren't understanding it or aren't as happy as they were when they were a child, you know, and it's very interesting when you consider everybody has a great childhood and then school and work and education and everything else. Well, okay, but in a human design way, the first 7 years is when we're most as our design. And then we start to get conditioned by our school friends, our teachers, girlfriends, bosses, partners, etc., etc. So, you know, everybody has recognized those first years of their life when they were happiest. I'm generalizing here, but well, that's when you were least conditioned by everybody in your life. And it is the conditioning and the environment of which conditions us and puts us out of tune. You know, this sort of monopole, this tuning in frequency. Well, you know, we have an option with the human design information to tune into ourselves or not. We can allow ourselves to be conditioned by all those around us, and we end up being some sort of like a jigsaw puzzle, you know, that is got 4 or 5 different jigsaw puzzles in it, and it's not fully intact. Or we can tune in and we can have every single piece perfectly organized, perfectly straight, not bent, and actually enjoy the picture of what we were supposed to be.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know my first 6 years were incredibly unstable, a lot of loss, a lot of trauma, a lot of instability. So my whole life has been a self-identity investigation and search because of that, you know. And it's kind of like the identity crisis is something that always comes up again, like trying to see who you are through the outside, through how the world's responding to me, or, you know, how the call and response thing is kind of showing me who I am or who I'm not. And so it's a big theme that still sticks around. And when I was having a hard time last year, I was Googling all different mental projector celebrities just to see like characters, to see like how are they a mirror to me? What are they doing? What did they do in life that I could resonate with? And ironically, the ones that came up that were the closest to my design, in my experience, it could not even be true, but in my reading of it, I mean, I'm still a preschooler in my human design studies, so I haven't gotten further than that. But I found Pablo Picasso and Freddie Mercury, and they're two characters I have had zero affinity with. I mean, in fact, completely not compelled by them. And so that was interesting. At the time I found it, I was super hating my life and hating myself. And so to see characters that I thought were despicable, you know. And what's interesting, that since that time, they have shown up on my radar with bits and pieces of bio and information that I couldn't push aside. And I've actually have grown quite appreciation for both of them. And that was just interesting to, in time, just uncover and reveal that we are very individual characters, very individual. And so just to have appreciation, to have that fearlessness, to just evolve in who you are, and like as eccentric, you know, and whatever, but to celebrate it and enjoy it. So do you have any other mental projector celebrities you can share with us? And have you had experiences or comparisons like that?
Well, just, you know, for me, not necessarily my idol, but I'm a very big Peter Gabriel fan. I've followed him on 2 tours around Europe before, and yeah, he's a mental projector. Which sort of tickled me when I discovered that in his chart, you know. But yeah, it's amazing. One thing that I often do these days is you'll see a film or you'll read an article of someone, and you know, I will then quickly investigate and create their chart, and I will see their chart, and then I can totally pick out and understand that person from someone who I may know quite well from either their films or the celebrity, the sports person, or whatever, actor, singer. You know, sort of certain things about them, or know about their biography, you know, if they've written one. And you can see it in the chart time and time and time again. You know, probably one of my all-time heroes, George Carlin. You know, he had our channel. You know, he was a manifestor, I believe. You know, very different, but it's so interesting to see their designs. And another classic one is Richard Pryor and dear, shame on me for forgetting his name. You know, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. What was his name?
Yes.
Oh, dear.
With a G.
Gene Wilder.
Gene Wilder. Interesting, yeah.
And now their combination chart, because this is another thing with the human design. You've got your individual chart, but then when you put it with someone else, you are no longer these 2 people. You are merged into this one thing, which can explain an awful lot of marriages and breakups as well. But their combination chart, after I think 5 or 6 Hollywood hit films, you know, their combination chart, and you can see the whole aspect, you know, and it's just, you know, not wanting to offend anyone, but when you're aware of this sort of information, and then you drive past a church on a Sunday and people walking in, you know, you just want to say, hey guys, time out, seriously, you know. But yeah, it isn't for everybody, you know. Not everybody is going to get the human design system, but for those that do, it's a very rewarding thing, and you actually get to really understand so much more about life. I have in my Pluto's, I'm 48.2 exaltation, so I don't suffer fools gladly, but my point of this is that I'm quite deep, and I am often very deep with people. I can't help it, it's a part of me. But in the majority of all the conversations when I meet people and talk to people, what comes out of my mouth, the most common word that I hear people say to me is true, and it's almost a little bit boring now in a way, but it is what it is, yeah.
Well, tell me about some of the rewards then.
Some of the rewards, how you can, sort of just understand so much of what goes on around you.
So then what is rewarding to you personally?
What's rewarding for me personally is that I can understand what's going on. The mind is, from, 3 months before we're born, when the mind comes into the fetus, it wants to do something. It has nothing to do. We're then born, the mind still has nothing to do. Mind and brain are very different things, but the mind basically wants something to do, and it doesn't have anything to do because the body does everything. And so then the mind starts to create problems, starts to be mischievous. Human design shows you, with your life experiences and the actual information itself, it shows you parts of the duality. It demonstrates itself so clearly time and time again that you then start to capture where your mind is taking you adrift, and you start to see where other people's minds are taking them adrift. Just simply these days, with the current status of where I've reached within my journey, I can sit anywhere and just enjoy watching, just observing. It's, you don't need television, you don't, there's so much out there just in all of our bodies, and just in simple interacting of proper listening to each other, proper engagement with one-on-one with another person. For us, because we're projectors, with other types it's different, but just to properly engage and actually just see what there is there to see. There is so much superficial wrongness, misdirection in the world. It at times I scream inside, because I can be at locations or be talking to someone or overhearing a conversation. This person is investing all this time in this sort of form of yoga or this sort of sports activity. They're doing this with their diet. They do this morning shake thing, and then they do this. And, they're putting 100% intention. They're putting a lot of financial input. They're doing a lot of general energy and wanting to be better, to be more of themselves, to be healthier. And yet what they're doing is actually hindering them at times. It is not the correct thing to do. Mm-hmm. It's like anybody who's going to the gym 24/7 all the time to get fit. Well, really, they should only have a channel or channels from their root to their spleen. These are the people who actually benefit from that and need that. Other people don't. Us being mental projectors, we haven't got the energy to work out at the gym. So there's all these false premises that is in the world, from the media, from the commercialism, feeding and educating children and us when we were children, that you need to do this, you need to do that, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, when all this is doing is actually just creating more profits for them. You look at some of the motivational speakers, they talk to a big audience and they say these things. Well, half of the room, yes, they can be being accurate to and helpful to. The other half of the room, they're sending them to hell, you know? So it may sound that I'm being, sorry.
So some people might find Jesus and that's their cure, and some people might find human design and that's their cure. I mean, who do you think finds human, who do you think really benefits from, where are they at in their life when they find it?
I can't give you an honest answer on that, because I think it's too vast a question. But one thing I can say,
do you feel like it's usually when you're looking for answers or in inquiry, or you? I mean, there's got to be something usually when it pops up and actually makes an impact or lands in your life.
Yeah, you know, not trying to avoid the question, but if I could see that person's chart, I could actually give you the explanation for it. The other thing you mentioned about people who find church, but again, you know, there's just looking at the simple 4 quarters. You know, I can look at a person's chart and I can see, you know, if they are going to be religious. You know, I'm going to see if they're the person who likes to constantly be active, or actually they just like to think about things, or whether they like to just listen and hear people who have done things. You know, there's so much explanation that this gives you, because remember, this is the fundamental imprinting of the DNA structure of the whole program. You know, everything is built upon from this, you know, talking to plants and insects, you know, even inanimate objects, you know, everything has like a 25th gate. You know, inanimate objects, you know, they've still got this aspect, you know, there's everything is made up from this, because the bottom line, religious people aside, that, you know, we have 5 senses here on this planet, and this is an experience. You know, there's a reason why no one else can find any other hospitable planet to live on. There's a reason why no one else can find any other life living elsewhere. It's because the program is here. We are only here to actually experience this atmosphere. It's why we're given the senses. It's why we're here. And we're only here for the benefit of the body. It's the body's journey. This idea of who we think we are, you know, this is just the passenger. It's just the camcorder. Yes, there's reincarnation, but this is just the camera coming back down into a different body each time. You know, it's very interesting when you look at the history and you can see the patterns and the way that things have been. The way the stories of which they've been said. But remember, stories are one thing. When you've actually got the mechanics and the facts of things, you can see what's correct and what's not, and you can see where the bias comes in or not.
So do our charts show any fanaticism?
Fanaticism.
Yeah, like to be very into something or some truth, or
I would fanaticism. I'll have to get back to you on that one. But you know, obviously we have the open sacral, so we will not know when enough is enough. We have the open ego, so we can always be trying to prove something. The open solar plex, avoiding confrontation and truth. You know, the spleen, holding on to things that aren't good to us. The open root, always being in a rush or pressure to get things done. The open G center, always looking for love and identity and direction. You know, and the head center, you know, we're mental projectors with only one channel, so we don't have a defined head. So we also don't really know what to think about, because we're not fixed. We're open to think about any aspect.
Well, I want to wrap things up because things have, time has flown by, and there's so many more directions we can go into. Now I'm in a few groups on Facebook about human design, about projectors, and it seems like the majority of the messages people post that are positive are about being here now. Love yourself, be here now, be present. So it's just kind of funny that Ra, who is, I don't even want to get into the story, but who this information came through, basically that's his message. At the end of the day, it is,
Yeah.
So it is really a Buddhist message, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, you know,
Or even practice.
yeah, but human design is a synthesis of many things. You know, you've got the Kabbalah, you've got the I Ching, you've got the astrology. You know, it isn't anything that's necessarily new, but it's never been synthesized like this before. You know, it's like a lot of people who believe in Kundalini, which I don't. You know, Kundalini is an old aspect from the seven-centered. Yes, it used to be there. Yes, it is very powerful. From my eyes, at least, you know, there is all this misdirection, and normally it comes from either someone's ego being out of place or someone wanting commercial gain, which is not necessarily harmonious. So, yeah, but anyway, love yourself more than you do, and just enjoy the now. You know, look upon life as the old sort of 1980s TV games where you had the conveyor belt of the cuddly toy and the washing machine and the hostess trolley. You know, life is like that, constantly passing in front of you. You know, don't get stuck on any one thing. You need to keep on looking at the moment, living in the moment, living in the now, and loving yourself more than you already do.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would like to know, because I actually haven't delved in enough to what Ra says, or what the message is, or what the underlying belief is with the design crystal and all of those things. What is the big reveal when we pass away, when we drop these bodies with human design? What's the big reveal?
Well, the first thing is that the body is a one-time use. The crystal, design crystal, as you say, that comes from the earth and it goes back to the earth. Nothing actually happens unless you actually leave the body for, you know, 72 hours. You know, I think it's at least 72 hours. You know, 3 days you need to just leave, not touch the body. Then if you have not touched the body for that duration, then something can occur. But if literally the personality crystal can get caught down here, you know, on this plane, in this atmosphere, the personality crystal can get trapped. You know, so I haven't done the courses on the spirit schools and ghosts and demons and things, but you know, there is an aspect that you know, the way certain religions actually make sure that they cremate the people before sundown and you know, bury them sort of very quickly. Well, they're doing this as part of their religion, which is actually negating any aspect of any spirit or soul that they believe they have. You know, I don't believe I have a spirit or a soul. You know, I don't. I just have a consciousness imprinting of which has had numerous experiences here before, and therefore I have an association of experiences which leads me to think that I actually have something like a spirit or a soul, or we have been sold this aspect in the fact of we have a spirit or a soul, when it's actually just the fact of like a parachutist, you know, in the army or just, you know, socially. it keeps on jumping out of the aeroplane and falling down to earth. Well, this is all our personality crystal really is. It just comes down into a body each time. And hopefully the body, when it dies, it doesn't get touched. And then it can actually transcend back again. If it can transcend back, then it has an opportunity to do something. But otherwise, it's just going to be trapped down here.
Well, this sounds like a whole can of worms that I just opened. How many bodies actually are untouched for 3 days? I mean, what, 1 out of a million? I mean, someone doesn't find them in the bushes somewhere after they flew off of a cliff, or?
Yeah, well, every now and again you do hear these stories that like an old age pensioner or elderly person was, only found 4 or 5 days after someone noticed the milk being there. Well, when I hear those stories, people around me are sort of going, "Oh, how dreadful," and I'm going like, "Good for them," because they are actually. It's the nicest funeral that anyone can imagine. Is just to be left alone.
This is interesting. I've never heard this before. Never heard this before. Very interesting. All right. Well, I want to wrap this up, and it seems like there are many branches we can have some human design 101 on. Very
101. Yeah, that's where I live. 101.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I love it. Well, so that could produce a lot of fear for people to know, like, all right, and then my body is gone and I'm gone. So what do you just see yourself? Is that like then I'm released into consciousness?
You really want to start going into these questions?
Well, I don't know how to wrap this up because I'm a little bit
Well, the way to wrap it up is to say that you got to come back for part 2 to find the answer. You got to keep the listeners interested. Mm-hmm. You got to keep that bait, that carrot there,
Yeah. So I would just like to know what it's like in your view of Iceland right now. What time is it there? Is there still light? What's your view out the window?
Yeah. It's still daylight. I can see the island where all the puffins are out on the ocean. I can't see across the bay, which is 40 kilometers in front of me, so there's a little bit of cloud there, but it's 11:15 at night and it's still daylight. I have no lights on in the house. This light is just from outside. That's
amazing. Well, we had a bit of a wind during our interview, and but it's
those wind chimes were nice.
Huh? Those wind chimes? Oh yeah, I didn't even notice. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for this conversation. We're definitely going to have to add a dictionary and many links. And maybe we can make like a Pinterest page or something with our charts and some basic information that would be like bite-sized pieces for people to know. And as I understand, you're very accessible. If anyone wants to contact you via Skype and have a little chat or inquiry, you're pretty open to that, huh?
Well, I'm open to invitations. I'm not saying that I'm going to accept them. But if somebody into human design or wanting to know more has any particular preference to speak to me, then they can sort of contact me to invite me, but there's no guarantee that I'm going to do it. I only like win-win situations in my life. This is something separate to human design, but basically I've learned the hard way, and I just, because I have my own authority now, I can sort of state this, that I like a win-win situation. Depending on the invitation, maybe there's a win-win, or if there's not, then we won't talk.
Okay, well, just to be clear, win-win doesn't necessarily mean financial compensation.
Oh no, I'm not talking about money. All I'm saying is that, I bring beer to the table, you bring food to the table, it's a mutual share. We both get something from it. that win-win. It's not
Well,
about.
basically, the bottom line is you're approachable. I'm approachable. If you want to ask us questions, email us. Anyway, it was lovely talking to you. Thank you so much, my doppelganger on his own island at the edge of the world. And I look forward to chatting with you again.
Cool. Love you.